Hey, this is Talani Person. Hope all is well with you. You know, the holiday season is coming up, and we look forward to spending time with family and friends and just looking forward to relax and just enjoy the season. But then, guess what ended up happening? We began to reflect and think about ourselves and our lives deep down. And inside can be a discontentment about a particular area of our lives, silent frustration, whatever it is. It's just what I've discovered for me. I'll just tell on myself that was a cycle that I experienced for many years in my life, many years, up until the last 4 years. And it was a just it's really sorrow. I'll just go straight into it. It's sorrow. And sorrow is the uneasiness of the mind. God spoke sorrow over mankind as the consequences for Adam and Eve eating or partaking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why did he do that? Because Adam and Eve did not follow his instructions on how we are to live our lives the way he created us. We just focus on that. The way he created us, the way he wired us in his image and likeness. And so he said, okay, with that, they will experience sorrow when they attempt to live a life without me. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, that commitment, because you do not have to live with the sorrow. That is a cycle that you can exit next year. This time, you can look at your life and say, hey, that is gone. I don't feel that way anymore. There's an element of freedom for me to be, and the joy of the Lord that's in my heart and the peace of God that's in my mind. That's what God has for you. So each year for me, when I was examining myself, I was examining things or what I had acquired or where I was measuring myself with my career, but I wasn't looking at my commitment. In Second Chronicles chapter 16, verse 9, it speaks of how God looks throughout the earth to see who he can show himself strong in the lives of people whose heart is committed towards him. And that's the key to exiting that cycle, is committing who you are to God, period. Is no other way around it, just committing who you are to God. There's so much to it, but the one that I want to point out is in John chapter 15, verse 16, Jesus, when you have Jesus in your heart, he says that he chose and appointed you to produce good works. And this good works is so much to it. One is part of being who you created to be, to bear the fruit of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, and go on. But the second part to that as well is living God's plans for your life mission. It's so important to recognize that God has given you a life mission. It is not just called for inside of the four walls of the church, but clearly what you do on a daily basis, you, is separate from your title, whatever title or what organization or church you belong to. It is clearly between you and Jesus, you answering that call, because he said in John chapter 15 as well, without him, you can do nothing. And if you attempt to do it, you create this life of existing where you're constantly living with factors that work against you. So it's important to recognize that sorrow produces those symptoms of dread, frustration, restlessness, and we can go on. But you have the power, the choice to exit it by examining your commitment and asking yourself, have I truly answered the call that Jesus placed on my life? And there are 3 areas to focus on when it comes to examining this. Is number one, who you are, who you were created to be in God's image and likeness. Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 says that Jesus is the image of God. As followers as followers of Christ, we are to pattern our lives the way Jesus did, how he thought. And the first part to that is receiving the commandment of love, because love is who you are. God is love. Jesus is love. It is who you are. So it's important when you receive the love of God, that wires your personality, how you are to think, the way God created you. So I encourage you to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, either the Amplified version or the NIV version. When you read that, meditate on that day and night, you begin to see yourself and experience what God or who God created you to be. You begin to look at yourself in a whole different way. Level of competency increase, level of self-worth increase. It is so vital because you begin to break past barriers that could be working against you and allowing you to think that what God has for you, or the secret things that God keeps speaking to you, that you can't fulfill it. So when you make a commitment to walk in your authentic nature, who God created you to be, that's when God began to show himself strong. The promises that he made, the abilities that he can fulfill in your life, you begin to experience it. And then the second part is when it comes to your commitment, and we're talking about Jesus choosing you and appointed you, and then he for a good work, and that's part of your talent. I keep talking about talent because talent is huge. Talent is used until you leave this earth. It is so vital because that's what Jesus is looking at. Think of that. He gave you something that is so priceless that no one can duplicate in the earth. And he called you to use it. It's connected to your life mission. It is what is going to produce the life that God has for you to experience, the fullness of who you are in your heart, that unlimited potential. And then the third part is your influence. Huge. It's part of your human nature, influence. Every person was born with influence. Influence is either positive or negative. It's not neutral. And that's really when you are adding value to people, being who you are with love and encouraging, connecting, and serving people with your gift, your skills and abilities and the talents on the inside of you. God may have called you, Jesus chose and appointed you to start a nonprofit, to start this business, to come up with an invention. Whatever it is for your influence. It's connected to your influence. So, for example, influence is connected to culture. There are some areas in culture that you are called to. It could be education, it could be politics, it could be media, it could be arts or entertainment, it could be for the family, religion, business, whatever it is, to identify, have you fully committed to that? So when you look at those three areas of your life and you begin to commit, then look for God's instructions. Find and look for yourself in the scripture. You are in it. God has a plan for you. God has have a spoken word specifically for you. And when you put it to practice in your life and you know the spiritual laws, you begin to experience the unlimited potential on the inside of you. And I guarantee you, next year, you commit now, you will not be frustrated or agitated. You will have peace in your mind, the joy of the Lord, which will be your strength, and the wisdom of God to put to practice whatever it is that Jesus chose and appointed for you. So I encourage you to continue to own your truth and live your vision. Blessings.